What's up, everybody? It is Mark here, aka Captain DeFi, and I'm doing something new. We're going to try something out, and it's going to be watching along with me as we take a look at something that I saw that was interesting today. It is Sunday, the 4th of December. So, we're going to take a look at a Twitter space that was going on at the same time as Mario Nafal doing the Elon Musk Twitter space. Now, luckily, both of these were recorded. We've got Alex Damska's page here. She is an ex-SEC lawyer, and I found out about her from the Mario Nafal Twitter spaces early on when SBF and FTX were collapsing. And SBF is doing his media tour, so what was really good about this was looking into some of the more legal details. So I'm just going to highlight as we go along a couple of interesting parts to this space. So yeah, come join me for that. So this first part here, let's have a listen.
Invested, I can invest. And the truth is that Sequoia has people and access that retail investors don't have. So there is something to people relying on the fact that, oh, they invested, it must be a safe investment. But, they don't take that responsibility. Part of it is that they get paid also in tokens.
And that's really interesting there. So there's a lot of VC funds and hedge funds and pension funds that got in, and they highlighted this tweet here. So if we take a look at this, this shows various groups that had exposure to FTX, and that includes some of these pension funds and other major capital firms. So you've got Mike Novogratz here, Pantera Capital. There's the Ontario Teachers Pension Plan, one of the biggest pension funds in the world. We call it superannuation here in Australia. So it's really interesting that a lot of these groups, the questions are whether or not they did their due diligence. And because maybe they did some more, who knows what is under the hood there. But even if these guys did their DD, a lot of it would have been influenced by the fact that Sequoia was buying into it. And if you want to follow the leader, and you don't really know what that leader has put at stake there. And if all that's at stake is tokens, it's not quite the same as others putting their hard-earned money from customers and themselves on the line. So someone's liability is not necessarily the same as someone else's. So an important one to highlight there. We'll jump ahead to some other stuff too. Okay, so here's another part where there's a guest talking about what regulators do and don't know. Let's listen in.
What's pretty interesting is that, like, even the folks that, when we saw all those congressional hearings and that type of stuff, the folks that grill these people, like, that grilled, what's his name from Robin Hood? I'm blanking on the name. These guys, the people that ask the questions, don't fully understand any of the technology or the, you know, I guess you can say that, yeah, let's just say, let me keep it simple and just say the technology or the way how any of these markets work. They rely on, their staff who often don't know much their darn selves. So,
Now, that might be the case in many places, and we certainly saw it when there were those congressional hearings with the Robin Hood founders, and even with Facebook and questioning the CEO of Google and stuff like that. But that's not to say that it's the same everywhere. I mean, here in Australia, we're pretty lucky. We do have folks that are those advisors to the policymakers actually coming to the meetups, and we've seen them at conventions and conferences and stuff like that. So they are, and especially in the meetings that we've been able to have with people in office, it does show that they have a yearning for the education, and the only way really forward is to educate from the community perspective, because a lot of the people in those places, and not to defend regulators, per se, but the fact is, it's not just crypto that they're looking at. There's a lot of other stuff that they have to do in office. And for us to expect that, well, they need to know all about crypto, well, maybe it's a twofold thing. They need to learn more, but we also need to be coming forward and teaching as well. So it's not just a one-way street there. And another one here on the validity of credentials and just trust in the space. Let's have a listen.
We have to question credentials. People don't ask enough questions, and it's even the political people. Like, that is, you would think they would do research. Do you know that this guy actually knows what he's talking about? Who originally said that Sam is a financial genius? What evidence do you have that he's a financial genius. Oh, none? Because he's not. He's not. He would never was. What he did was act like someone that people believe a financial genius would act like. And that's the stuff that gets me so, like, that's what gets me disheartened. Because I just think, I look at the people like that and I think, I can't help any of you. I can't help you. I can't remove your bias. I can't help you if you're going to like short circuit all of the research and the work that you need to do.
And it is human nature. It's something that was there in the crash of the 20s. It was there during Tulip Mania. It's always been there. And wouldn't it be great if there was a tool, a set of tools that could help us not just have to trust our own senses, but actually have something where we can verify. So, yeah, that is pretty interesting. And we jump to another great part where there's a guest here, Bilo Crypto, who talks about the potential for an opportunity to come up out of this. And I like what he says here.
It's been difficult. And at the same time, I feel some hope because this happening opens the door to us coming up with solutions. Solutions that we never thought needed or were needed, but they obviously are. There's a lot of talk about how this happened, and there's many things that happened to bring us to where we are today. One of the things I'd like to talk about and see what you guys think is this whole problem with rehypothecation of the assets. Okay, so you can own crypto, and you can borrow against that crypto, and that's fine. The problem becomes when you borrow more than once against essentially the same asset.
It's not something that just happens only in the crypto space. I mean, let's look at construction here and using margin and leverage to potentially get deals because you can show you've got a certain amount of capital, and over leveraging that's happened in many other industries as well. So it's not just crypto, but it's funny because we've got blockchain tools that can solve that.
And I know people get this, and I know people are starting to realize and learn how this happens, but I'm a little disappointed that nobody's trying to find a solution. I just put out a tweet I'm going to plug my tweet right now because I think it's a simple solution. It's blockchain. And I don't see why we can't have devs on all the different layer ones, layer twos, working on a solution where they actually attach a tag to any hypothecated asset. So any asset that gets borrowed against should have a tag on the blockchains.
It's really simple, but it's something that we're not seeing enough, and they get into it a little bit more. But look at the core tenets of the blockchain, the features and benefits of blockchain. So one of those being automation, one of those being transparency. All of these things, when you put them together, and yes, the composability and security, but imagine having a situation where when you enter into a contract, you can see that the other side has the funds. You can see that the other side basically isn't using that collateral for something else. They're not rehypothecating it. And it is really interesting when you look at not just how much trust we have in crypto, but how much trust we have in the real world and how opaque it is. When we get paid by our employers, we don't know necessarily that they've got funds on the other side. And sure, we could take people to court if we're a small business and whatnot, but it takes time, it takes money. It's not so easy to do. When bad things like that happen, a lot of businesses, a lot of people don't just go chase it down because the way we handle it with courts and law and all that kind of stuff just aren't so easy to do in the real world. So it's really interesting that we can have this trustlessness if we use blockchain tech, if we use it in the right way, if we use those features and benefits that it is good for. We just weren't using it here. I mean, FTX was not a blockchain only situation. We've seen this kind of stuff happen before. But yeah, stay tuned for more of these. The recording, I'll link it in the show notes below. But really interesting stuff going on in spaces. There's a lot of clever people out there. We're definitely trying to do stuff like that. I mean, we're building trade flows, which is something that, is tackling this very problem. And yeah, it's going to be really interesting times. So cheers.